more than gold, more than money, more than anything, time's your most precious commodity, isn't it? And I think you come to realise that when you're being faced with the loss of it.
One or two of my colleagues kind of raised eyebrows as Tom gone over to the dark side working with an ex-con.
You're a thug and that's all you had to say. Have you read all of Shakespeare's sonnets? Because I have.
All I saw was a hand over my mouth. Obviously I'd just become conscious. I'm gasping for breath and I'm thinking, this bloke's trying to suffocate me. Take it easy. No difficult questions.
I'm trying to think of something to ask you.
So I think for me, on the subject of questions, one of the things when we deliver and stuff that always comes up is I can tell all my stories, which I think, you know, these are really powerful stuff. You always outdo us because you always say, I remember when I died. So I'd like to hear about that.
I've always believed in fate. Mm-hmm. 3 things happened. Any one of them 3 things hadn't have fallen into sequence, I wouldn't be sat here now telling the story.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was bodybuilding at the time, and I'd done several shows culminating in I won the British title for my weight class, and that was 2009. When you do shows, and obviously there's a 4-month diet, and it's quite severe. As you get nearer the show, it gets more and more severe. So you're basically starving yourself. You're basically eating chicken and sweet potatoes. And then after the show, all the stuff you couldn't eat, I was just ramming down my throat until I was sick.
Yeah.
My head was saying stop, but my belly was saying you're not like. So I would literally have a big tub of savoury, a good big tub of like chocolate and stuff, and I literally was just shoveling it. I inhaled it because for 4 months I hadn't touched it. Yeah. And after every show, I ate myself I ate that much rubbish. I ended up being sick, and obviously that's unhealthy in itself. And I'd done 11 shows on the belt, and part of the process before you step on stage is you dehydrate, and this was the dangerous bit. It's where you get rid of all the water.
All right.
So you're getting rid of all the fat, and then you need to get rid of all the water, and it just hardens you up. And you use obviously diuretics to do that, and it's quite unhealthy. Mm-hmm. And that's the bit that done it really, because your blood thickens and stuff like that, and then you eat a load of rubbish after the show, and it all just culminates in a... Anyway, cutting a long story short, 2012, I normally cycled to work, and I'd cycled to work that morning, and I'd had a chest infection for about 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and I'm not somebody that would normally go to the doctors. I just try and write it out. But anyway, 3 things happened. The first one, I got in, had a shower in the outside facility, went into the jail, and I was walking up the hill to the gym, and I met a lad called Stevie Robertson who worked there, and he was like, how are you doing? I was like, I've got this chest infection, blah, blah, blah. And he told us his story, and what had happened was he'd gotten a chest infection, he'd let it go, and it had developed into pneumonia. He says, and he nearly died. So he's like, Tom, you need to get an appointment at the doctor's. So I thought, and I normally wouldn't have done that, but I thought, I will. I'll ring the doctors. And normally at the doctor's, I was doctors in Durham at the time, normally takes you about a week and a half to get an appointment. Anyway, I rung there, and I got an appointment on that day at 3:15. So I thought, right, well, we'll go get some antibiotics, clear this chest up. Went home, had a bath before I went there, got to the doctor's. I was actually sat in the doctor's surgery at 3:15 exactly. The doctor needed to go out. He said, I'll not be long, Tom, I've got to go and get some paperwork, I'll just nip out. No warning, no pain, no anything. I just leaned across his desk to have a look at some paperwork, because I'm nosy. To have a look at some paperwork, and the next thing I knew, I woke up, and it was like, obviously I didn't know at the time, but what had happened, I didn't have a pulse, and I wasn't breathing on my own. Yeah. And they'd been working on the CPR, and then that hadn't worked, so they had to get the paddles on us to resuscitate us. But my first recollection was, all I saw was a hand over my mouth. Obviously I'd just become conscious. I'm gasping for breath, and I'm thinking, this bloke's trying to suffocate me. You know, it all happens in a split second. I'm effing and blinding and lashing out. And then it was actually the doctor says, Thomas, it's me. It's Thomas. I said, oh, I recognise you. And then obviously I saw all these people around us. And I'd been like, I hadn't been breathing on my own. Obviously we were doing CPR for like 14 minutes before I was breathing on my own again. So yeah, that's me party trick story, that one.
Yeah.
I died, but it obviously wasn't my time, but it's a good story, that one.
And I always outdoes all of mine.
I always, yeah, he thinks I do just out.
Yeah. When he first ever did it, I was like, I did this, I did that allegedly, and then he went, on the day I died, I was like, is any need?
Yeah, no.
Is any need for that
Just
story?
black catted him, didn't I?
So yeah.
Yeah. So here I am, yeah. Yeah.
So, right then. And I want to know, things changed for you then, didn't they? You know, you've mentioned kind of how you looked at life.
Absolutely. Well, two significant things have happened in my life. Actually, one of them was that, and the other one was actually meeting that fella there. Yeah. Not many people in my life has changed my opinion to the degree it did. The first one is, I was laid in the hospital thinking, how lucky am I? You know, with them three things happening, how lucky am I? And I kind of tipped my life upside down because things I thought were important, you know, when everything you love has been taken away and then he gives you it back, it just tips your life upside down. So things I used to think were important weren't. I mean, yes, going to work hard, do what you're paid to do, but I'd probably spend too much time doing that sort of thing and not prioritising the right things. Going to the gym was like a religion to me. I mean, I'd still go to the gym, but I wouldn't let it get in the way of my private life anymore, whereas I used to, you know, you treasure your daughter more. And I used to say, you know, on a Saturday and Sunday, my mum lived 15 miles away, but sometimes I was too busy. Yeah. I was never too busy after that day, because that became a priority to us. Yeah. And it takes something like that sometimes to assess what you have and appreciate what you have, because quite often you take a lot of stuff for granted, and to have that taken away but given back just changed my life and the way I thought about life for the better, to be fair.
I think as well that's even bigger than loss of freedom, isn't it? Loss of life, that's loss of everything. So at least most times in a custodial setting there is some kind of hope that freedom will come again, unless you do natural life, or you know. And we always say that about time, don't we? When we're working in the prisons. When I was a young offender, I used to think, right, well, whatever I'm going to get here, I'll get out and then I'll still have some life. But I say to people when we're working, and loads of people have died just in the last 5 years. There's no saying you're going to make it to the end of that sentence, because you know, more than gold, more than money, more than anything, time's your most precious commodity, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And I think you come to realise that when you're being faced with the loss of it.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Prison Opticians Trust, providing vital eye care in prisons and empowering inmates with professional training for a better future.
I think we were talking to someone recently in prison, and I think he'd done, 32 years in short sentences? Back to back. So
I don't think short sentences should be given out, if I'm honest.
I've got to agree. I mean, what's the point of, like, somewhere like a 3 or 4 month sentence, right? You can lose your job, you lose a relationship, you can lose family ties, you're not going to see your kids. Accommodation's another big thing. All of that loss for what? Do you know what I mean? I think, for me, community service would be a better option. Like, serve your sentence in the community, but doing something purposeful. I agree, and that's coming from an ex-crew.
I just don't think it helps.
Like non-payment of fines. You know, who's that hurting really?
Exactly.
In the grand scheme of things. But I agree with you. Short sentences don't work. To be fair, and again, this is it's not the prison service's view, it's mine and my experience of the prison service. Prison generally doesn't work. And there's a number of reasons for that. There's not any one thing, but you know, I don't believe any true rehabilitation takes place until that person's ready
for it.
You can give them all the help and support, and there is, you know, if you want to take it, it's there, but a lot of lads just aren't ready for that change. I think they like the vision, but not the reality of it, because it is quite hard, especially if you're a repeat offender. I mean, did it do you any good, Gary, to be fair, apart from educate you?
No.
In crime.
To be fair, I became well read, Tom. You know.
Yes, I mean, some good sometimes does come out of it.
So but I only became well read so I could weaponise that. Because if somebody said you're a thug and that's all you had to say, have you read all Shakespeare's sonnets? Because I have. Do you know William Blake? So I read all those classics, hundreds and hundreds of them, thousands of them now, to weaponise it. Again, like a lot of other things, I didn't appreciate them until later. And I'm actually going reading a load of the books that I read when I was in prison again, you know, I'm rereading them now, and it's you know, the right book at the right time.
Yeah.
Just like the right song sometimes. So yeah. So just touching on, because obviously it's about me. You mentioned that meeting me and stuff. Do you want?
Oh yeah.
You need to know how this happened. This is important.
Yeah, the journey and how me and Gary started to end up work together. Well, firstly, there was 2012 when I had that, when I died, and the second massive thing was in 2017. I was working at Durham. I was working in the gym, and I got a phone call off the governor, and he was like, "Tom, I've got this ex-con coming in, a lad called Gary Crooks, and he's coming in to do an 8-session programme, and he says, and you're babysitting him. Am I allowed to swear?"
I would.
Well, my exact words were, "What the has that got to do with the gym?" Because I couldn't see the connection. Regardless, he says, "You're doing it." So from a cast of thousands, he decided it was me. And everywhere Gary went, I had to go with him, because obviously he couldn't carry keys. So I thought, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll test the kid. I'll challenge him. I'll set him a bit of a challenge. Gary said I stitched him up. I say I set him a challenge.
Didn't stitch you. I stand by that.
So I picked a load of probably the best way, problem children. You know, the lads that were always fighting, they were always taxing, they were always down the seg, they were always on C-SIPs, and they were just generally a handful for the prison. So I give them 12 of the best. And I kind of expected it to, I didn't want it to go wrong, but I thought there's every chance this will degenerate into just carnage. Anyway, I'll cut a long story short. Gary came in, he weaved his magic, and I saw something I'd never seen on the delivery of a course. And I'd delivered courses myself. I've sat in on courses and stuff, and it was the best thing I'd seen. And genuinely, it was one of the best courses and had a significant impact on those people in the room who started to engage positively. And even after the course was finished, I saw an improvement in the custodial behaviour. So it had a significant positive impact. Anyway, during these 8 weeks, obviously, I got to know Gary quite well. Back in the day, like, Durham was like, it was an old-fashioned, it was a screws jail. They would call it a screws jail. Quite archaic views, quite a tough jail for a prisoner. And it was kind of, I had a blinkered view on crime. Well, if you don't like jail, don't commit crime. And to me, it was that simple. If you're an addict, well, don't take drugs. And after meeting Gary and doing some of the work with Gary, this is what I'm saying about two things that significantly changed my opinion how I dealt with things, was I saw it like from a deeper angle, if you know what I mean. Because I was always black and white, didn't come to jail, you know, didn't take drugs, didn't drink yourself to oblivion. And it's far more complex than that. There's a lot more, you know, you get into trauma, that upbringing, you know, they might come from a criminal family. And so I sort of saw crime from a different perspective. And it did, it actually changed me, and for me, made us a better prison officer and a better understanding and more, not that I wasn't particularly helpful, but a better understanding of why people done what they've done. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and anyway, that was in 2017, that happened. And Gary actually said to us, and I laughed in his face, to be fair, he says, "You'll work for me." And I laughed in his face, and yeah, whatever. 2 years later, it was 2019 it was, 2018-19, I got a phone call. Gary rung us, he says, "Will you come in the office, we'll have a chat," blah, 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 offered us a job. And what had happened, and this was something that was quite unique as well, like no ex-prisoner has ever won a contract with the criminal justice system in England. Yeah. And Gary'd managed to achieve that. He'd get in Northumberland, Home House, Durham, and Dearborn, and he'd get in the contract to go in and deliver the course that he delivered in Durham. That's the impact it had. Offered us a job. That was on the Friday. Went into work on the Monday, handed my resignation in, and the rest is history. Went to work with him because it probably has come at the right time for me, because I'd done a lot of time in the service. I was getting close to retiring. I knew I could draw my pension anyway. I mean, I took a massive wage drop, but I've never sort of worshipped at the altar of profit anyway, at the altar of money. But it was the appeal of the job and actually helping people. Because what you can't do in prison, certainly not Durham, because of the amount of churn and the number of prisoners, you can't really get in depth and help them to the extent that sometimes you want to. I mean, I did help a lot of people, but you never really got the quality time to spend. and I felt I would get that working with Gary, and it certainly worked out that way.
Yeah, and I think people who've been in jail have went back into talk and they've won training contracts and stuff, but I think the nature of the contract we run, it was multi-agency kind of partnership on a big scale. So
it was unique. It was
I don't
unique.
think that had been done before, so so I was dead proud to win that.
It had certainly never been done with an ex-con and an ex-screw working together. And even that, there was one or two of my colleagues kind of raised eyebrows as Tom gone over to the dark side working with an ex-con. Bearing in mind, Durham had that kind of attitude, didn't it? It was kind of them and us. But yeah. No. So that's basically how we met, how we ended up working together. What happened was, unfortunately, COVID struck. Gary started it, actually.
So I've had it 9 times.
You did it on purpose, I think. Yeah. So we weren't allowed to go back into the prisons. Obviously, you've got to feed the family, so I went and done other things. But it was February this year where I came back. Obviously, Gary's won a lot more work. He's become famous now, and he's won a lot more work. Is it sensitive stuff, what the stuff we've won?
Well, it's right across the prison system and stuff.
Basically, it's right across the prison system, doing what we were doing in the 4 prisons in the North East, but we're going to go national this time.
Well, I hopefully. Think for me, one of the big, who's been really supportive is the NHS, and the commissioners in the NHS have been really supportive, giving us the opportunity to go back into the prisons across the North East. Because without their backing, I couldn't do that. Yeah. And I think we're going to get afforded the opportunity to go into Low Newton as well. Yeah. I was mentioned there, we're doing some conferences around hope, so we'll be going into Low Newton, so I think we'll be inviting you to come in with us. Yeah. If that's all right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there you go.
So yeah,
from criminal.
You didn't know I was going to spring that on you on camera, did you?
No, I didn't.
So you can't really say no, can you?
I've waited for my moment.
Yeah.
I personally think if you two would come in when I was there, seniors working together now, that would give me a little bit of hope.
Do you know what a lot of it is? This is the way I sometimes play the long game with this. For me, I'm going in there and I'm planting the seed. Now, it might not grow today, it might not grow tomorrow, but it might grow next month. Mm-hmm. And we've had letters a year after the course. Lads, what you said, it's hit home.
Right.
So, do you know what I mean? For me, it's about planting that seed. Yeah. If we can achieve that, we've achieved some good.
There's a lot of power in, I think we've talked a lot about change and again, hope. And when we go in and delivering, people are astounded, especially people who knew me as a criminal, just as astounded as prison officers, with Tom. Yeah. Because I hated the system. I've said it many times when I've given my story. I hated police, hated government. I did not like prison officers at all. They were the enemy. That was it. I say hello and I'd be nice because I want something.
Yeah.
But I didn't like them, and but I've got to say it again. There were some wonderful prison officers, some wonderful nurses, some wonderful everything. But it's where I was
at the time.
I thought manipulate, exploit, get out and break the law. So it wasn't their issue. It was me that was filled with, ill intent, shall we say? But I think especially when we go into young people's prisons, such as Diebold, on behalf again of the NHS, those young gang members and stuff, we were working with people across the country who were doing, long time in prison. They'd been shipped from London, Birmingham, all over the place. In fact, one of them just did the number 6 podcast, Prince. Yes. Tom and I helped him exit that kind of life. We're in contact with him and we've given him a job as well. So he's going to be working with us. So I think young people seeing us work together can see the power of change. Yeah. What real rehabilitation is and what kind of real recovery is as well. Yeah. Because it's taking a gamble, isn't it?
But I think that's the other thing that, why it was so appealing to me. You've got to remember what Gary was back in the day, to him coming back into the prison and me seeing him from that to that. Yeah. It was just so, wow, this isn't the same fella. And you've got to remember, I locked a lot of his associates up as well, who some of them were still coming in and out. I mean, one lad we met out, I don't know if you should tell that story.
Yeah, you can tell it.
It was a lad called Artie. He was one of my cleaners on one of my peacekeepers on E-Wing, and he'd just getting out, hadn't he? After he'd done a long sentence for allegedly not. Well, he was guilty armed robber, and he just getting out. Saw him in Durham. I was out with Gary drinking, and he came across. And how you doing? And I always got on with the kid. He's dead now, bless him. And he offered Gary an armed robbery, and I said, "Well, this is a test," because you still have that. is he clean? Is he still in the life? You know, one step foot in the platform, one step in the train, and he turned him down.
Right.
Turned him down. It was a lot of money, and the kicker to that one is they actually done it and got away with it. But it was a real test for Gary, and that's something else you find. Like, you get a lot of lads in prison, they want change, and when you're in prison, it's easy to say it, isn't it? Because you're missing your family, you're not having the freedom. You know, there's a lot of these dynamics going on. But the real challenge for me is when they get out the gate, because the drugs are freely available. They go back to the same area, hanging about with the same friends, and they end up doing the same thing. So
and with Hardy, who sadly passed, a dear friend of mine, he could have been anything, but he literally, it's like the Clash song. Daddy was a bank robber. That's, you know, he was in crime, but he could have been anything he wanted to be. You know, he was an entrepreneur. He was a really clever guy, and do you know what? People would never believe it, hearing that he was in fact an armed robber. But he had a big heart and he was a good person. And he, you know, when he did die, a lot of the charitable stuff that he did, sending kids to school, he was, you know, sending food parcels to places, and he really was giving to charity. But then again, I gave a lot of money away, but it wasn't my money, you know. So, but he did have a good side, and I think sometimes if you're locked into that path, and I said, we were talking before, your choices that you made and stuff, you know, you weren't well, and but you weren't a criminal. But I was, so I broke the law by choice. Despite what set us on that road, I had many chances to turn around, but I didn't. I kept going because I wanted to. But I think if those right interventions or those right meetings, you know, could be with a prison officer, nurses, whoever, that can set you on a path, can't it, and completely change your life.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot to be said for good people within the prisons and within the communities. And I know we spoke about mentors before, and you meeting that lady in jail who, you know, she sadly passed on as well. But they are there, aren't they?
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
those good people are there at the right time. Yeah,
Absolutely.